Hi, and welcome to the Pioneer Builders podcast. This is my very first podcast where I have an official guest. I think you're going to like this one. Joey Viltrakis is his name. He's out of Northern California. We cover quite the broad gamut. We start out with something that he and I communicated about over on Instagram to begin with, which was insurance audits. We talk about some cost accounting, spec building, change orders. We throw some building science in there. I would say even some structural engineering. Super nice guy. 29 years old, really good head on his shoulders. I think you're going to like this one. Thanks. Stay tuned as we get into our interview with Joey Viltrakis. Hello, and welcome to the Pioneer Builders podcast. I think this is my fifth episode. I feel like I'm getting my sea legs under me, but this is my first official time having a guest. At the end of the video, we'll go over the Lego set. That way we get all the construction and building and design stuff out of the way. And for those who make it to the end, you'll get to see the Lego set in action. Today we have a guest, Joey. Joey, tell us about yourself. How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Viltrakis. It is
Viltrakis.
it's a Lithuanian name, and I know nothing about Lithuania, but that's where my last name comes from, evidently.
That is really interesting. Yeah, so our last name is Euler, and I believe in the old country it'd be pronounced Euler. And my brother likes to say that it's Prussian royalty.
Okay.
If you know anything about Prussia, it's no longer in existence, so I don't know that our royal line really did so well.
Sure.
So, really excited to have you. We first connected up on Instagram, which is a pretty interesting thing. And one of the things we talked about, let's just get right into one of the things that you and I talked about on Instagram, and that was
Sure.
insurance audits. So I think you had a kind of an interesting experience with your insurance. Let's get right into it.
Sure. If you don't mind, I can just give a brief little summary, I guess. I'm pretty new in the whole contracting world in general. I got my license back in the very beginning of 2021. And I worked for a licensed contractor for years before that, but still newer overall. So I'm very new when it comes to all the insurances and all the layers of fun that you get to deal with as the license holder, as the business owner. So what happened with my little insurance audit story was that when I did my first year of workers' comp, we had a bill at the end of the year. We did the audit ourselves, and I didn't have accurate enough time cards, and there was different stuff that factored into having a bill, and so I ended up paying something. And so I decided the next year that I would hire someone to do more of the record keeping and kind of the and handle the audit itself. So that time around it went worse, actually, and we had a miscommunication. I think was the main thing, that I didn't know that my person I was paying to do the audit that they didn't know that they had to actually give them time cards. They gave them all the other information, but just not the time cards. And evidently that was a big puzzle piece missing. So my insurance company sent us the bill saying, you didn't provide adequate, proof of, something, I guess the specific, task that you guys were working, because we get a cheaper rate when we do, for example, concrete than we might do, for carpentry.
Yeah.
So the bill was to the tune of $14,000 because
Whoa.
they lumped it all into the most expensive carpentry rate.
Yeah.
Because not only was it not separated by class, it also wasn't separated by their pay rates, because there's multiple rates for carpentry. For example, if your guys are paid over 35 an hour, or less than that, I think that was the threshold at the time. And so I said, oh, we have all the stuff, we have all the information, we can send it to you. And the company told me, just go ahead and pay the bill, because we don't want to be in sort of a limbo of dispute, because that'll actually look worse for you and you can get extra fines. So just pay it and we'll get it reimbursed immediately if that is the case. And so sure enough, they told me that all the information's okay. They received the time cards and they'll get a refund as quick as possible. And To make a longer story short, uh, after a few months of not receiving a check or anything, I reached back out to them, and it was a little bit of radio silence, a little bit of trying to get them to give me anything, because, as I'm sure you know, as a new business owner, 14,000 is not
Oh
nothing.
man.
It was a lot to just be without for indefinitely and not be able to plan for. So they ended up kind of being hard to get a hold of, hard to get answers. And again, to make a long story short, so I spoke to a supervisor who then, after I think it turned into like 4 or 5 months, she finally admitted that the person who was handling it made some sort of clerical error or just some
Yep.
basic excuse about how um, they didn't get it done or something.
Huh.
So it ended up taking many months to get it back, but we did eventually see it. And so now I know that I can still hire that out, but that I still have to sort of oversee the process and make sure that even if they're hired to, pass along all of our records through the payroll, because it was through my payroll company, they still have to, provide what I have to provide them. And I hadn't even given it to the payroll company. So it was my fault, the initial, error of it,
Hmm.
but it snowballed from there. So,
So I've got a similar story, and I've been doing this for quite a few years. We've been working with the same insurance company for years,
mhm,
and we always get, and it sounds like maybe this was the same with you. We always pay a premium up front, and then after the term is over, we end up getting audited. It's not because we've done something wrong. It's more like an estimate versus actual costs.
right.
So we pay an amount up front, and then they take a look, make sure we've got certificates of insurance for everybody. Um, they pay attention to the different costs for subcontractors, materials purchased, things of that nature. Excuse me. So all of a sudden, I get a bill this year of like $8,000. And it was like, that doesn't make sense. And part of it is because we are not doing the volume that we were even doing before. And it was way outside of the world of what is typical for us. In fact, borrow your term to make a long story short. I email those folks, and it's interesting. It almost harkens back to finish carpentry. The guy who was training me, he said, if you ever get out of sequence, like with doing your window casings, you will make a mistake. Like, just process it like an assembly line. So anytime something happens, it's like, was there something that changed? Is the point. So they used a different insurance audit company. I'm used to working with the same lady from the auditors every year, and the form was different. And so it was like, there's something different. This is a huge amount of money, but I think it's natural to assume that the professionals know what they're doing. So it must just be something's changed. I knew inflation had happened. So I sent an email, and I try really hard to be tactful in my emails, but I think I did use the word exorbitant in there. We went back and forth for an incredibly long time. So I do our cost accounting, and I felt like I might have known what was going on, and I tried to like have the person from the insurance company look back at the history, just notice, let's see if there's a trend that's different.
Mhm.
And one of the key things that was in the insurance audit was just cost of materials. But in the past, cost of materials got broken out into how much is installed by us and how much we provide to subcontractors.
Right.
And then there was also some insurance certificates that they were showing up that we didn't have. And I think we ended up saving about $500 of the premium just because of the insurance certificates, because they
Mhm.
treat anybody without the insurance certificate as if they're uninsured. And we basically pay
Right.
insurance on those folks.
Mhm.
So what it ended up being was they were taking the materials and lumping all of that into the subcontractor cost, even though the bulk of our materials are self-installed.
Right.
I would
Oops.
say exactly. Oops is right. And if you read through my email chain, I think one of the lessons for anybody who's listening to this, there's a time and a place for email, and there's a time and a place to pick up the phone and talk. So we kind of hit that impasse, and it was like, can we talk about this? And once we talked about it, it was really nice. The lady was really humble. It's like, I'm not an insurance person. She's not a construction person. or she's not an accounting person. So that's kind of what came out of this was I understood how the costs were being split and she didn't understand that. Once I explained, we buy our own lumber and install it, I think the light bulb started coming on. So then she ended up going back to her supervisor and we saved, I don't know, $4,000 or something like that. But it was
Well, ours,
definitely one of those lessons learned. Um, if something seems out of line, ask the question
yeah,
and don't hesitate to, I like maybe the term respectfully push back or, kind of question this just a little bit.
sure.
I think the last thing I would say on that is it's really easy for somebody to shoot you a bill for 4,000 or 8,000 or $12,000. But I like to look at it from the high level view, but also like, how many cups of coffee could I buy for $4,000? And I would never do that. So maybe this is one worth checking on. And I've
Right.
run into the same thing with other companies, which is why I'm glad I still do our own cost accounting because if something seems out of line, I can just ask the question and get it squared away.
Right. Yeah. Well, I will say one thing that that reminded me of is just the reason for the initial, or one of the reasons for the initial miscommunication between myself and the payroll lady who was handling the audit was that they had never done payroll for a construction company that
Yeah.
does multiple class codes,
Yep.
because that just was a totally foreign concept to her. So there was just nothing from her end that thought we should have different class codes. So just there was no, I guess, nothing to provoke me to be asked for time cards that would indicate that we did concrete one day, electrical one day, because especially in the beginning we self-performed a lot of the different things, and we would do all the little drainage, plumbing, and things like that, or
Hmm.
whatever.
So
So
I probably should have started by asking you to tell us a little bit more about yourself, but here we are. And I think you kind of piqued my interest on a few things.
mhm.
Did you say you started in 2000? What year was it?
21.
So, in the height of COVID, you decided to start your own construction company?
I guess so. We live in a pretty rural area,
Oh,
and
interesting. So
they
where are you at? Just I'm going to stop talking for a minute
sure.
and just like tell us the story.
Okay. It's a weird one. I mean, or maybe it's not so weird. So I did start in 21. I've been doing construction for basically ever since I could hold a hammer to some degree or another. My parents flipped houses. My dad's a radiologist, but they would always flip houses. That was always their side hustle.
Hmm.
And so ever since I was little, that was part of just keeping the kids busy, is letting them help with demo and things like that. Worked for a custom builder in our local town, Fortuna. I live in Humboldt County. It's closer to Oregon than the rest of Northern California, but it's a pretty rural, small area, and there's not a ton of action going on here. Our local, um, what do you call it, university just became the Cal Poly University, so there's more growth going on than there has been in the past. So we're
Hmm.
we're trying to sort of jump in with both feet there.
Yeah.
But yeah, in 2021, I got my license, and well, the year before, I guess I applied for it and left my previous employer and started kind of doing little side things, and it's history ever since. It's been definitely a rocky road with COVID, but at the same time, because all of it was difficult anyways and it was all new anyways, I don't have much of a contrast to compare it to running a business pre-COVID.
Yep.
And because of the growth and other things going on, it hasn't necessarily gotten easier. So it's the some things are much easier and some things are more difficult as we grow and expand. But I don't have much of a contrast to say it was like this before COVID, because we still had plenty of work. There was still lots of stuff to do, and there were people that definitely didn't have the budget anymore because of just life, and
Yep.
COVID had its economic effects in our area. Excuse me, as well. But we stayed busy and learned a whole lot during COVID, and it was a pretty easy uh, environment, I guess, to be able to keep each other safe and be respectful and
Yep.
um, not be in each other's grills and in everyone's house. We happened to do a lot of like outdoor work at that time, a lot of concrete outside and different things that included doing additions that someone else would kind of pick up where we left off in the interior because they knew, they had a dad or uncle that was a contractor that wanted to help them or whatnot. But now we do, custom homes full time, and ended up actually being approached by my old boss, Russell Friesen, to purchase his old company, or that division of his company. So he, about a year ago, had approached me and asked me to sit down and have lunch with him. And at the time that he asked me about that, I thought he was talking about doing some like framing for him because he was having a hard time retaining guys, and we had entertained the idea of being basically a framing contractor for anyone, whether it was commercial jobs around here or residential stuff, which was a little bit less common for people to sub the framing part out. So I thought that he wanted to sit down and have a serious talk about that. And so sure enough, one of his last great foremen gave his 1 month notice and wanted to do his own thing. And so he decided, instead of kind of firing things back up again, looking for another foreman, he just wanted to fold up shop and and move on to something else. And so he approached me about that, and it's, again, history since. There's been a lot of stuff that's occurred since then, but now we have a bookkeeping system and a whole way of operating a company that clearly has 15 plus years of people way more intelligent than I, building it and sculpting it. And so I do my own bookkeeping to an extent. I do have my payroll slash tax preparer company. They kind of look at the books at the end of the month and make sure everything's just correct. I don't pay them very much, so they're kind of just overseeing it.
Yeah.
But I do all of my accounts receivable, payable. I make sure bills are out on time and I know what's coming in. And again, when you were talking about that, I was thinking that that's one of the Friesen's main points in kind of making the sale, is that when you're the owner and you're doing your own books, you're provided those opportunities to see those numbers and flag them. Because if you have someone hired out for the position that you happen to be in when you caught that, they might have just wrote the check and you might have just only seen it on a report months from now at a quarterly meeting or something. So it's a lot, but it's very systematic. And I have a full binder full of printed pages that tell me how to report payroll correctly, so that hypothetically, if I jumped off a bridge tomorrow, someone could pick up where I left off with the business and know how to run it page by page, instruction by instruction. So that's my goal, is to create a company that is that for just the sake of practicality, but also for the sake of sale. If we ever did want to do that, we could open up our books and open up our binder that shows how the cookie crumbles and sell it if we wanted to, I suppose.
That's
not that there's any goal to, but
no, it's not exactly the same, but I've tried to do my filing system so that should something ever happen to me, it follows some kind of rationale or logic, that people could see all of my electronic folders and figure out where everything's at. My dad, bless his heart, he lived out of a box with all sorts of papers, completely disheveled, and wasted more time trying to find things than actually being productive on those
You're
matters.
describing my dad.
I think I'm describing a lot of people's dads. And it worked for him. It absolutely did. So how old are you, Joey?
I am 29.
And are you married or footloose and fancy free?
I'm married. I have a wife and I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so I
Nice.
started my family about the same time as starting the business, at the same time as COVID. So it was all a nice big figure out session the last few years, but we're getting there.
I remember talking to my father-in-law, and it was like, if it was a logical decision to have kids, nobody would do it.
Right.
It's one of those things. It's wonderful, but and even kind of the same thing with Dad. He started the company back in '78, and I think I've told this story before, but he was at a lunch or a dinner or something with a bunch of, I'm just going to say, self-important people, and they had to go around the table and say what made them successful. And Dad's just an old farmer from North Dakota, and he stands up and says, "More guts than brains." And it was like, instead of this long highfalutin, here's how great I am.
Yeah.
And there is an element of truth in that, especially when it comes to developing. Is yes, there's hard work and all of these other things, but there's also an element of chance. And I think a lot of truly
No doubt.
successful people acknowledge that. that sometimes it's the right place at the right time. You do make the best of your circumstances. But so, what are you doing now? Like an average day in Joey's life? Are you bags on? Your Instagram seems to focus on, was it truck organization or bag organization or something along those lines?
Those are different random ideas that we've had. The whole social media thing has been a very quickly transforming thing. My day looks like I work in the field full time. We do 4 10s, so Monday through Thursday. We are 6:45 to 5:15 on the site building the home, and Fridays are my days. I get in the office and do all that fun stuff, and then that often bleeds over into Saturday. But honestly, nowadays, I pretty much have my excuse me. Saturdays I pretty much have my to myself now and to my family, and Sunday to where I have my weekends back, which is pretty special. And I don't think
Yeah.
that often happens that quick
Yeah.
with a business. And the Instagram thing has been interesting because one of my employees, Alex, he does the social media and film for our church that we go to, and so that was sort of a natural thing that he would be the guy that does that.
Hmm.
And as we had a little agreement going that he would kind of do that and manage it and put some serious time into it in exchange for a computer. So I bought him a new computer and he sort of worked that off, I suppose. And then once we were getting toward the end of that, I happened to meet a local guy named Tex Kelly. He's like an influencer and very talented guy just in general, and has just awareness of social media and some of the different ins and outs of it that I just had no clue about.
Yeah.
And he works hand in hand with a guy named Justin, who was just in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And this is his whole setup. This is his studio. This is where he does his editing and all that. And long story short, is Tex became our like regular social media manager. So
Hmm.
I pay him, and he comes out on site, takes pictures, puts mics on all of us, and then collectively paying them to put together like a whole YouTube project that we haven't released our first episode yet, but it's basically to document everything up till now as far as roughly outlining my life and the business and really this job, because this is like a really really big deal job to us, and a really really big deal job to the owner, as it always is for someone having their home built.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're at now, is that I participate a little bit on social media as far as the actual editing, and usually you can pick my videos out because they're not very good quality and they're kind of chopped together and silly, and maybe the song doesn't ring with anyone else, but it happens to be a song I like or something. But
Yeah.
that's where we're at with it now, is that I get to stay focused full time working in the field and have someone else come up with a lot of the ideas for what to film and what to do. And as I get more comfortable with that and more aware of what seems to work and what seems to click, I do have more participation on the horizon, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's kind of where we're at now.
Are you the person behind your Instagram? And by the way, what is your Instagram handle or your
Uh,
company's?
Viltrakis Design Build.
So if anybody's listening, that's Viltrakis. I think it should be like Viltrakis the Lithuanian, but I don't think he's going to change it for us. So anyway, are you the guy behind it, curating your feed, or do you have somebody else
No, so
behind it?
that's what Tex is now, Tex Kelly. So it's an interesting collaborative thing, because when Alex did it, uh, he was obviously able to log in, and I was, so it's just two of us. And now that
Mm-hmm.
he's quit doing it, and Tex is now doing it, all three of us log in at any given point or stay
Oh,
logged in on our phones.
yeah.
I'm generally the one commenting, especially when it's, I'm sure you see plenty of it where people are pushing back and being rude or telling you how much of an expert they are on something. So I'm often the one that responds, just because I have to be
That's
the
your
one
wheelhouse.
that's, yeah, and I can set the spicy level, whatever level I think is appropriate, and the other guys are much less likely to jump in there and bite back. And not that I try to do that. I try as much as possible to keep it very professional and very positive, as far as making friends even when people are trying to make enemies type thing.
Yeah.
But in general, yes, I'm the one commenting and replying to messages, because they kind of just let me take the lead with that.
Yeah.
But Tex is the one coming out to film, putting the edits together, coming up with captions, posting them, and then a lot of his replies are or kind of the more friendly just kind of generic stuff to
Hmm.
respond to people. So it's an interesting that is one of the very non-systematic things we have going on. It's pretty loose and freestyle, but it works for us so far, and
Yeah.
it seems to be working.
Awesome. So you've got a YouTube series. Is that going to be like breaking ground all the way through to final punch out, or what's the idea? Or is it to be revealed and you want to
No,
keep your
that's
secrets?
no, that's good. It's basically what you said. Yeah, breaking ground on the project, but also using this as an opportunity to kind of tell a little bit of the backstory to how we got here, as far as my history building and starting a company and all that. But keeping marketing and keeping the customers in mind, as far as trying to create something that someone who's considering us as a builder can watch and decide to have us build their house rather than watch it and be run off. So we're definitely keeping that in mind.
Is that the primary focus of the social media thing, or do you have multiple goals? It sounds like one would be marketing, and anything else that you guys are trying to achieve?
It's it's interesting you asked that, because we haven't had many sit downs to discuss it and really define what our goal is. I think the unspoken intent behind all of it is that we want to put something cool out there and get more followers. And that's like, I
Yep.
think, as shallow and as deep as a lot of it is sometimes.
Yep.
But we have had more talks recently about what we really are trying to do. And the where we kind of land with it is like, yes, it's fun, but whatever, this is costing time and money to do this. So
Hmm.
there should be some sort of intent for seeing that as a monetary result at the end of it. So of course we'd love to have enough views and followers to get a check from YouTube. Of course we'd love to have customers be able to find our page to become more familiar with us, to then become more comfortable with us building their home and confident in our skills to build their home. So hopefully it would result in that. But I think we'll do it no matter what, because we enjoy it, have fun doing it. But of course there's the business side where you can't help but think about what you'd love it to be if you could choose.
I think that's a balanced answer. I know I can kind of echo some of that. I didn't have a master plan. Uh, I still don't have a master plan, but it's kind of staying flexible, what makes sense. Even having the podcast, you know, if you watch the very first one, there was definitely no master plan. And then just over time, hopefully it's gotten to be produced just a little bit better. But I do so many of the different tasks that to sit down and always come up with a master plan isn't particularly feasible. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
perfectly comfortable trying something and then just go, well, that didn't work, but boy, did I learn some lessons along the way that I can integrate in some
Sure.
other manner. So yeah, I completely get that. I think one of the things that I've gotten the most about social media is actually just learning from other people and getting exposed to different, not just trades, but like an HVAC manufacturing company, and learning something from those folks that I wouldn't have been exposed to, or even seeing so much regionality, how different people build in different locations, and getting to learn from them. So
Yeah,
that's just me personally.
I can relate there a lot. We've obviously learned a lot from other people on Instagram, but it's odd how it has an effect, or at least it has with us, where you learn more about why we build
Yeah.
here the way we build, because we have incredible storms being on the coast. We have tons of earthquakes here, and so our houses are engineered like crazy compared to maybe what you might see somewhere where they don't have earthquakes, for example. Or I know there's, if you're not having earthquakes, you tend to be in an area where maybe there's more tornadoes and things like that. But it definitely helps to like put in perspective why certain codes are certain ways where we live. And of course the obvious is we love watching guys that are way better at building homes, because we want to learn. And we always take the approach, or we try to take the approach of, this is what we're doing, but we are not saying this is the best way or even the right way, but here it is. And that's, I'm sure you guys have seen a whole lot of that. People have a hard time accepting that. People
Hmm.
often assume that you're teaching the right and only way, or at least their comments seem to reflect that. So it's definitely been interesting as just like a social experiment, seeing how people respond to things, because people can get mad at you over nothing and get real worked up and defensive when you're just trying to show something you think is cool, and that's it.
Yeah, it is interesting. my brother Tim Euler at Awesome Framers, every once in a while he'll invite me to collaborate on his post, and it's like the vitriol that people spew at him is mind blowing.
Yeah,
And he does not mind going to the spice level, as you say, of a habanero or ghost pepper or Carolina Reaper, as the case might be. But I'll tell you, my account is like, rarely do I get a snarky person on there. So
yeah,
I don't know what that says about my followers. Uh, but I've also found, and I will say this, people aren't always so good at language. So the way they might thumb type something might not be the reflection of what they're actually thinking in their mind or the intent or the tone that they have. So if I can respond in a non sarcastic way, asking for clarification, a lot of times I jumped to a
right.
wrong conclusion and
Hmm.
they actually were not being that guy. And then to speak to your point as well, one of my favorite quotes is there's 5 ways to do something, one of them is wrong. Like, and I think that's a good mentor mentality to have as well if you're training somebody. There are certain things that, yes, it does need to be done this way for a specific reason. And there's one way to do something that is just completely and utterly wrong. Like, I was going to say use the butt end of your hammer to nail something, but there's probably a reason for you to do something like that. Definitely, you could use the butt end of your hammer depending on what it's made of to persuade something to move. But try to maintain that humility
Yeah.
that none of us has a monopoly on knowledge. And I think the algorithm, quote unquote, tends to reward those who are more shock jockish. And
Right.
I'm not in the market to be that way, to be controversial or adversarial. It's just not worth it. To
Well,
me,
and it's
this does need to be fun.
it's exhausting. I mean, I would so much rather get online and have it be a good time
Yep.
rather than sit there buzzing away on my phone responding to people because they're being negative.
Yeah.
So part of my rule that I try to very intentionally practice is to try to give people a second chance at being
Mm.
nice by responding to even the most negative comments with just anything I can come up with that's positive. And I wouldn't say it's 50-50, but there's a good percentage of the time that they either completely roll over and they realize you're not going to get defensive with them and
Yeah.
they are nice again. But there's definitely the times that they aren't. But to me, I have to make the effort because I can very easily dive right into all the comments and clap back with every negative thing, every spicy thing you can imagine. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is, like you're saying, misinterpretation of what people are saying when they don't use emojis and they don't, make an active effort to be outwardly friendly. It can come across as dry and sarcastic and cold. So try to
That's so
assume in the
funny.
best.
I'll tell you a story about that. I can't even remember who it was. Um, to a degree, I get paid for certain things with social media, and sometimes it's free product, and sometimes there's absolutely nothing at all. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. So there was somebody, I can't remember which account it was, but I think I was like, hey, would you consider paying for whatever it was? And they sent back like an emoji for laughing or some sarcastic thing or whatever the case was.
Like,
And I
okay.
totally responded like I was trying to be I don't even remember what I said. I didn't yell or anything like that, but I defended what I had done and they were like, "I'm so sorry. I sent over the wrong thing." Like, and I felt kind of like an idiot, but I don't think I was a jerk by any means. But even so, it's like even that I think is important to remember. Somebody can miswrite something and it's literally a mistake. So anytime, I know we're kind of going down a rabbit hole there, if we can give anybody the benefit of the doubt, it's better for us and our heart and our uh, blood pressure and all of that. And for those times where people are genuinely being vitriolic, I just block them. Like,
Yeah.
nope, this is my account, I curate it.
Yeah. You
And
had your chance.
yeah, exactly. Same thing for me personally, like profanity, things like that on my account. Sometimes somebody will make, and this is just again me, a really good comment, but include something in there that I don't want a kid reading.
Right.
And I want my account to be very approachable. I think there's so much negativity out there that Anybody can come to Pioneer Builders Inc. account, have fun, learn something, and there's not going to be a bunch of nastiness.
Yeah, that's
Like,
great.
make it a safe
There's
space.
plenty of accounts that's the norm.
Exactly, exactly. So, what's your favorite part of construction?
Of the actual constructing part, like with
Yeah, the
bags
actual
on,
building.
the actual building. I really love the windows and siding phase because
Mhm.
it comes along with this feeling of getting something protected from the weather because we get slammed with weather here.
Are you on the
So
coast? Like, where are you
yeah,
getting
we're
the
like
weather
right
from
on. Like this
specifically?
build, for example, is like has a setback for the cliff that falls into the ocean on the coast,
Yeah.
and my home is at just maybe 7 miles or so from the coast. But yeah, we're right on the edge
If I
of the
can, I'll
ocean.
just ask you a couple of rapid fire questions then.
Sure.
Are you on the 101?
Yes. Yeah, my home is like 2 miles from 101.
And obviously to the west then, toward the water side.
My home is not. My home is 2 miles east of 101.
Okay.
Right.
And I was just watching not Good Morning America, the Today Show yesterday, and they were showing the atmospheric river and palm trees that have actually fallen over, which is very unique. There's no
Uh,
soil strength around the ones that they showed. Are you seeing any of the atmospheric river effects where you're at?
oh yeah, it's kind of a funny tongue-in-cheek joke around here because Humboldt County has a really weird little microclimate that
Mm-hmm.
even if you zoom in on the like the zone maps, Humboldt ends up being like the coast ends up being um, very different from just north, just south, or just east because it's very tropical, very rainstormy here,
Mm-hmm.
or rainforesty here. Sorry, and the atmospheric river thing is kind of everyone kind of laughs about it here because we're so used to water
Yeah.
that it's just kind of the way it is here. This has been a really, really, really wet year. Um, for example, it rained so much that they shut the whole freeway down, which very rarely happens. There's just
Yeah.
a low spot in a little town called Lolita where the water often, in a good rain, it often gets close to the median or close to the shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
and you go, oh man, that'd be bad if that came over another 5 or 6 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first year I've seen it actually cross over the entire freeway to where it was just a deep enough puddle that if you send it at freeway speed, you're going to spin out and crash. So they just shut down the whole thing. And then on
Well,
this build, it's
if you
we're
call it Lolita, Joey, you're kind of asking for a low spot and problems. Maybe High Lita would have been better.
right.
Hopefully, that is my only dad joke in this whole podcast.
That's funny.
All
I have a Justin's desk has one of these for some reason. I don't know what it does, but
right. Nice. So you were saying, sorry, I interrupted. You were talking about windows and siding, and you guys get really buffeted by wind-driven rain, it sounds like, and a lot of wind.
yeah, and it seems like it rains up often because we often end up building the home where it has the view. People want to find the
Mm-hmm.
top of the dome and carve out a flat spot and build a house. And this one's a pretty good example of that, where to the south there is a pretty steep embankment down to an earthquake fault, actually, which is ties back into that
San
conversation
Andreas
about.
or something different?
I don't know. I don't think it's a main one. I don't actually know the name of it, but that was one of our setbacks. Oddly enough, is an earthquake fault setback. We couldn't build too close
Wow,
to it.
that's super interesting.
It was a little bit intimidating when we learned that. So
Yeah.
we do not scoff at our engineer when he requires ridiculous seaming hold downs and ridiculous shear patterns because,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Huh.
that's down a big gully, and then to the west is that cliff I mentioned, straight to the ocean. So when a storm gets whipping up here, it hits. There might be 40 to 60 mile per hour winds with 80 plus gusts. It's hitting the hillside or that cliff, and then coming upwards,
Thing and
and
coming
so
up.
it can be raining up your nose and up your hood, and you're trying to get underneath the overhang, but it's just raining up your jacket anyways.
Huh.
So I do enjoy the satisfaction of once we can get the place dried in and move inside eventually.
What kind of siding are you putting on that house?
This is hardy lap siding for the most part.
And then anything special that you have to have for specifications for the windows, or do you not get high enough winds like 115 plus to change your window spec much?
I don't think we had anything called out there, excuse me, for the windows. We're using Sierra Pacific Industry windows,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they're good. We've never used them before, and their warranty is supposedly one of the very few that will maintain their 30-year warranty within that close to the coastline,
Oh, okay.
that
Yeah.
close of a radius to it, or distance from it rather, which is something I hadn't heard of before. I just assumed if they have a warranty, they have a warranty, but a lot of window companies will exclude themselves from their warranty within a certain distance to the ocean, which again, that was totally new to me. So that seems to stand out with them. So I'm hoping they're good windows that last a long time.
Huh. Do you know what the are they? I think Sierra Pacific is actually down in Shelton, which is close near me.
Uh-huh.
Not necessarily the headquarters or something like that. Are they wood windows, vinyl? Do you
They're
have any idea?
they're aluminum clad with wood. So they're aluminum on the outside, powder coated black, with I believe mixed grain fur for the inside.
Cool. That'll be pretty.
Yeah,
Anything else
they're
special about that project?
well. It seems like everything. It's a very unique place. The guy that we're building for, he's definitely an entertainer, and he wants to have a lot going on. So there's a hot tub, for example, on the master deck. There's a hot tub below.
Hmm.
There's a spiral staircase to an electric roof hatch that goes to a roof deck that we haven't framed yet. That will also have a fire pit up there.
Oh, living
And so
space up
there's
top then.
there's a lot going on this build. So it's an interesting one. It's been difficult. I won't lie that it's been a bear of a project. There's a lot of cooks in the kitchen per se, because the way we like to do things is we take them from the concept all the way through design and through the completion. And he had an architect before we were in the picture finish the whole set of plans, and several other contractors had bid on it, and it didn't work out from one way or another. And
Mhm.
so we ended up redesigning it, re-engineering it, value engineering it, having our engineer do a totally different foundation.
Hmm.
And it's been an interesting dynamic because the architect is still somewhat in the picture,
Mhm.
and he is an interior designer, and we're not really used to that. Our area doesn't uh,
Yeah. It's a little
have
more sophisticated.
yeah, so we're not quite used to that, and it's been a little rocky, to be honest, just making sure that we're all aware of what's already been agreed upon and removing any emotion as far as what maybe the original intent and the original drawing had going for it, but what we had to maybe change it to make it work and to make it feasible.
Yeah.
So it's been a good build, and it's been really cool to have a job that's this long, because it's over 14 months on our schedule
Yeah.
to really hone in on not only the job but also the business side of things, because I don't have to stay up all weekend thinking about where we're at Monday. I get to plan on being there and plan on my guys being there and kind of work on the business a bit more.
I love it. What kind of a contract are you using? Cost plus, fixed price, a lot of change
It's
orders?
it's a fixed price, and there are a lot of change orders.
Yeah.
I ended up at a certain point, once we hit about 20 or so of them, I made an
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheet where I would just put the name of the change order, its status on the site, if it's been completed or not, if it's been entered into QuickBooks, and if it's been billed for. Because at first I was kind of napkining it, because that was kind of a blind spot in my business, is how do
Mhm.
I we have a change order form and all that, but I didn't have a system for tracking multiple change orders that all have multiple stages of completion, because some of them are to be determined based on knowing that the several plumbing change orders will trigger a change order from the plumber eventually. But for now, he's just doing it just to get it done and keeping track of it in his own way. And so it's definitely been a learning experience there, realizing what my blind spots are and trying to make systems that accommodate it.
Yeah. Are you getting paid for them up front?
For the change orders,
Yeah.
well, yes and no. Yes, whenever we invoice for them,
Yeah.
but many of them, like I mentioned, are ones that really can't be determined yet.
Yeah.
But again, we might not be paying for them ourselves as much up front, because, for example, several of the toilets got changed to the wall mounted
Mm.
tank in wall style, and so yeah, we had to modify the framing a little bit, but it wasn't a huge cost out of pocket. And we did bill for the cost of the toilet plus markup,
Hmm.
but anticipating that there'll still be a plumbing change order, we still have that open ended with him, so that he understands there's still a part of that change order to be billed for yet. So yes, when we ask for it, but it's definitely a matter of if we've gathered the prices, and if we want to leave it in this weird limbo where we've billed for part of it because it cost us right away for some of the materials, but there's still some cost to be determined.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
if
it gets
that
pretty
makes sense.
complicated.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a little bit of an art to estimating and doing change orders. So like in that instance, you're exposing yourself to more liability than you would with a floor mounted toilet. And we should be
Right.
compensated for that because like we had a plumber and he just said, I'm not doing wall mounted toilets anymore. He had a really bad experience. And now, granted, as the professional technician, he should know what he's doing, X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, if you're using something that you're not experienced with or that the stakes are high, if there's anything that goes wrong, we should get paid for that.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Even if it's on them eventually, you're still the first phone call and you're still looking at it first and dealing with it first.
yep, yep. Yeah, and anytime you deal with plumbing, the stakes are a lot higher.
Right.
Have a fitting go out and ask me
Yeah.
how I know.
No kidding.
Well, any questions you would have for me? We emailed back and forth just a little bit, and if you don't, that is perfectly fine. But we're here.
Yeah, I totally do. One of the ones I would love to touch on is just the decision to go more spec in your the business of your nature and the number side of it, because we're exploring that right now. I wouldn't call it launching it quite yet,
Mm-hmm.
but there's not a ton of housing around here, and so that's kind of an ongoing topic all the time in our local news, is people having disputes about what they're allowed to build and turning old decrepit buildings into multi-unit apartment complexes. And it's definitely an ongoing thing. So we're definitely exploring doing the spec build thing. And for me, part of it is because I absolutely love building and I would love to just do more of it. But the idea of building for myself and being my own customer, to me, is possibly a more rich experience in just the building aspect of it. You get to decide your own finishes and you get to decide how much to experiment with new products and things like that. And that's the stuff I love diving into, but you can't always get a customer on board with that. We were able to get the zip system installed in this whole place,
Mm,
and because that's not even common here at all yet. We had to
yeah.
special order all of it, and it's I'm hoping that it does become more common here. But if we were doing spec builds, there's I think a lot more freedom to do that, and obviously again the money aspect is there too, because I love the idea of doing a spec build and deciding based on cash flow whether to refinance it and try to keep it for a long-term investment or sell it, and come up with a certain style that's like a Viltrakis home that you can hopefully spot out from driving by. To an extent, you don't want it to be too crazy, but
Mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
like that. I like the idea of building more houses so that I can drive my kids by and show it to them, because that matters to me too. um,
Yeah.
and so I guess to shorten my question to you is, why did you it seems like get out of custom building entirely and do spec homes full time, and then the financial aspect, the funding of it. I don't know if it's typically always involves a bank, or what are some of the common methods that you've seen or done yourself to finance the project, assuming it's hard to just write checks out of your own account for the whole thing.
Yeah, that's to use like the common speak right now. There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, sorry.
No, no. Uh, so I honestly think it has to go back in history to dad. And like I said, he was a farmer from North Dakota. He happened to go to college. He was the first of the kids. And have you already heard this story?
I don't think so. I listened
Okay.
to a couple podcasts you're on, but I don't think that
Well,
rings a bell
grab
yet.
some popcorn. Here we go. So he was in North Dakota, first of the kids to go to college, and received like no direction, right? He just went there, and they had like the track for him to choose what he was going to major in. He ended up majoring in finance and accounting, basically, and then he minored in political science, of
Mhm.
all things. So then that was, late 60s, early 70s, sometime around there. And that's when the Vietnam War was going on. So he decided to enlist, and he was part of the real estate corps managing leases in Saigon for places that the army had leased. By the time he was coming home, he had gotten married. I don't have the whole chronology down. My wife knows that better than I do. But mom and her parents, my grandparents, had moved out here to Washington. And when he came back, he was supposed to work for the bank, and there basically wasn't any work for him. But the guy
Mm-hmm.
told him, "Hey, I think Charlie, who was a general contractor, is hiring, needs a comptroller or a financial person, what have
Mm-hmm.
you." So Dad started working for Charlie, and he was a cost accountant there. That's, I think, where he really learned cost accounting. And it's amazing how much you learn about project management and construction just if you're paying attention by managing the inflows and outflows.
Mm-hmm.
So he ended up doing project management as well, working for Charlie. He was doing the books, and he worked with a lady who also did the books. And Dad was just getting so frustrated because Charlie was putting out too much capital and heavy equipment. And basically, it was for his brother in law to play on machines and things.
Mm-hmm.
And Marilyn, who worked with Dad, said, "Tim, you have two choices. You can either quit or you can stop complaining." And so Dad, late 70s, like 77, he went out on his own. He was used to spec building. So that was where he came from, so to speak. And I
Right.
talked to Dad recently, like, how did Charlie get into that? Because I get people on Instagram who will message me periodically asking a similar question. And it's like, coming from a spec light commercial background like Dad, it was normal to him, like
Mm-hmm.
to just go out and get a loan and build. It wasn't, he didn't know what he didn't know to a degree. But
Right.
on the other hand, he did know a lot because he had managed so many projects and so much capital. So what he ended up doing was getting something like six construction loans to build six houses. And this was like the worst possible time you could do that. So, similar to your situation, starting the business in COVID and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? There's always going to be tsunamis here and there. And how
Mm-hmm.
you adapt to them, I think, is very important. What he did is he was the carpenter, boots on the ground. At night, he did his bookkeeping. He paid himself a wage. So that was part of it. So the family never went without as far as
Mm-hmm.
that's concerned. You can put that into your estimate if you're getting a loan, and you're not double dipping. You're basically your own subcontractor.
Right.
Then that price gets packed into the price that you're going to sell the house at. And if you're self-performing, you should be charging markup on it. In one way of looking at it, if the market will bear it, you kind of charge that twice because the subcontractor charges markup. And then when you sell the house, the builder charges markup.
Mm-hmm.
So there's good profit potential there if you're going to be doing things in house, which
Right.
that might not be news to you at all, but maybe for somebody who's listening. Even if you can't, even if the market can't bear it, you've still made your wages.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not going to be hopefully putting yourself in a bad situation there. But spec building is it's way riskier. So
Really?
Dad was able to sell the houses. But once you've drawn down your full loan, so let's just say that it's, you know, 80% of it and you're putting in even 20%, once you start paying full rates of interest and the house is sitting there,
Yeah.
you can lose all of your profit. So it's not for the faint of heart. I would say to the degree that somebody can, and this is just us, this is what we've done. We do a lot of self-performing. We don't sub out a lot of things that we could, we certainly have, and we can do it in the future, but we're able to make more money doing things in house. And then if you can start accumulating capital and build out of pocket, then you can start essentially packing in the interest that you would have had to pay out and make that yourself.
Uh-huh.
Or if things aren't selling, you can lower your sales price and you're still able to maintain some margins because you've been your own bank. Is that all
Yeah.
track?
No, it caught me off guard that you said it was more risky because I'd never thought of it in those terms. What would you say is kind of the most, or I guess the reason in your area, maybe specifically, that something wouldn't sell? Because here it's just so, it's not that it doesn't happen that places stay on the market for a long time, but housing is so needed here that even the places that seem unreasonably expensive sell quick because people are just needing places to buy. and with this being a place that people are moving to, for people that are trying to move more rural and move to maybe more land to human ratio, but don't want to move outside of California, this is that place for a lot of people. And so the selling of it doesn't seem like a huge mountain to climb. So what would you say is the main reasons why something wouldn't sell in your area?
In our area, put simply, we always overbuild. Um,
Uh,
the market specifically where we're at right now, it just doesn't have the wealth to sustain it.
mhm,
And then when interest rates go up, basically the whole area's purchasing power has gone down.
right.
So if you go from 3% interest to 6%, it cuts out almost the entire market here. So I've been watching reduced prices just happen and happen and happen. So you're much more at the whim of whatever the Fed does as far as interest rates.
Mhm,
But also, we've had a lot of big builders come in. So there's a lot more competition with people who are way lower price per square foot, but there's a lot of things that they're not getting in those houses. So you have to do the education game. But if you're in a more rural area and you don't have national builders coming in, you might be in a nice little pocket like we had been for years and years
mhm,
until the big guys started coming in. So it's kind of a macro thing that
right.
ended up affecting us. And honestly, so we got into specs more because it is so fast. I can be so productive and just get a lot of work done. And my life does not revolve around work. So if I
Mhm,
can maximize time with the family or doing other things that I consider more important, I
sure.
can, as opposed to servicing 20 different change orders and trying to keep track of all that. And this one's in process and I got to remember to collect. I mean, it's
Yeah.
insane. Instead of, well, this is the kind of heating system that I want in, we can talk to the person that we've worked with for 20 years. It's just a lot easier. But when the houses don't sell, for us, again, and we're pretty self capitalized. Um, so it's a little bit of a different ball game when it comes to how much outflow we have cash wise.
Mhm,
We can rent them and basically make a return on our investment as if it's a, well, it is. It's an investment. Get the income, get the cash flow. Eventually, the markets always come back. Right now, it's pretty depressed here. We can sell them in the future at a tax advantaged interest rate. And in the meantime, we've gotten the income. It's not near as much as if you can just sell it straight away, or at least the capital. But you preserved your value for values to come
mhm.
back up. So right now, I'm working on doing a little ADU project. Uh, I would say maybe I've got a little PTSD from the last custom we did. The guy and his wife were, well, they'll never listen to this. They were insane. Uh,
We've
and
had
we
one or
were
two
in,
of those.
oh man. And we were in a transition period as a company. So I've pretty well taken over at this point, and I feel like I've needed some psychological healing to get to the point where it's like, I think I can take on another project. And, I want to provide work for the guys,
Mhm,
keep Timmy working. My brother in law works for us. So things have changed, and I think being adaptable is extremely important. But yeah, we're dipping our toes back into the custom game because, yes, there is more headache to it, but there's also you're going to get a paycheck. So
do you find that the reputation and the just the fact that you guys are out there makes it to where people are often knocking on your door and calling you, asking you to build, and you've been in the past turning them down, or that's a whole like almost starting from scratch as far as finding people that think you can build for them, not just for yourselves for a spec?
I get multiple emails per month with people asking for us to do various projects.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and typically, my patented response for the last 5 years or so has been, we're not accepting new projects at this time or
Mm-hmm.
something. And then as they've kind of come along, I'll explore them a little bit. What I am finding is Not too many people are getting a hold of us for big projects per se in our area. I'm getting more requests for doing like consultation type things, assisting people. Like I need to call a guy back. He's building this, I think for him personally, a high performance home, and he just needs some help. And he volunteers. He's like, I'll pay you for your time. Um, what I think happens more so is people are just Googling and they're finding us,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got good reviews. It's amazing how many people say that. What I would say on this quote unquote social media side of things is I always do video walkthroughs for our houses, to help try to sell them. I
Mm-hmm.
fell into that because during COVID, I couldn't walk people through the houses.
Sure.
That's something I always do is I walk through with them and I explain things, and it's not intentional, but I earn their trust. They're like, if this guy, I can only project, right? But if this guy is willing to spend this level of time with us and he knows everything about this house and he's teaching us, he's an okay human being.
Right.
Um, so I just did that recently for this ADU project. Is I was able to get the people to meet with me, and I walked them through a house that we have completed that's for sale. They could see the fit and finish. I can look people in the eye and talk to them, get their trust, and it's like it at that point does not come down to the dollars and cents. They want to work with somebody that they can trust.
Right.
So
I wondered that about the sale aspect of it too, just because in just our lunch banter, we've talked about like, man, if the Euler guys built a house and we had the option to buy it, you would just never worry about it. There's a lot of houses that are built by people that you would worry about it if there's an earthquake or big storm. I mean, the level of detail that you guys show on your builds is incredible, and I'd have to imagine that if families are able to look at that and go, oh man, we can watch this whole house built be built, or the houses next to it or whatever, we can see how these guys build in general.
yeah,
Or we can go shopping down the street for a place that you don't have a clue who built it, you don't have a clue the three people that remodeled it, and it seems like an easy decision. So I have to imagine that that comes into play when it comes to the sale of the place, that if people can look up, you know and watch you guys work, that's got to just leave people. And again, maybe it's not as much dollars and cents as much as the people buying your guys' homes, they have to be thrilled with them. I mean, they must just be happy about it, happy about the quality, happy about living in it for many years, and knowing that it's not going to fall apart from underneath them.
I sure hope so. I'd like to think so. I think it is a holistic thing. So even if they have a real estate agent or a broker with them, to try to get them, what would you, oh, I can't think of the term, basically buy in, drink the Kool-Aid, so to speak, so that
Mm-hmm.
they feel there's a difference with the house and the presentation and just the whole 9 yards. So it's like right now I've got one, two, three, like four lights, five if you include my camera in here. There's not one thing that leads to the lighting in my, I'm going to use quotation marks for those who can't see, in my studio here. But if you're paying attention to all of those little things, it leads to the whole.
Right.
So that's what I would say. It's everything together. It's meeting with them, but it's also how you communicate if you're prompt, and then who our real estate broker is as well. So it's definitely a holistic approach, I think.
Yeah. Are you guys going to? It sounds like you guys are both going to International Builder Show.
Yes, I am very excited. We'll be staying at the Paris. I've got a few different things: Sashko, Huber, Roseburg. I can't remember. Feels like there might be something else. But anyway, yeah, have a couple of little things going on there. And there's
Awesome.
also going to be a product reveal with Logix, and I don't know what that is yet. So I'm pretty
Okay.
excited about that.
What company is that? I haven't heard the name.
So they've got like AMC foam and Logix brand. They do ICF products, but then
Okay.
they also use a graphite polystyrene GPS insulation, which I really like from the carbon perspective, but it's also very stable. So we'll dive into the building science for a second. Different insulations lose their insulative properties depending on what the temperature is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's extremely stable. and it's become our go-to product for sub-slab insulation. And then also if it's a basement, between the foundation concrete wall and then our interior wood framed wall. So I don't know what they have coming out.
I'll keep it in mind because our next build is an ICF house in Hoopa, out in the middle of nowhere from where we're at. And
Cool.
the guys that are the ICF guys, again quotes for
Mm-hmm.
people who can't see, they're helping us out a huge amount just with even understanding the design and estimating process, and they might be giving us a quote to come down and stack them,
Cool.
and help leave us on a good foot there. So we're
Yeah.
jumping in, I guess, to the ICF world. So I'll be paying attention to that.
Well, shoot me an email. I'll set you up with Justin, and maybe he can help you, maybe he can't, but this is social media at work right here,
All
folks.
right. Awesome.
Cool.
Well, yeah, the IBS is the first time we're doing any sort of trip like that. So we're looking forward to seeing what people we meet, and hopefully would love to run into you guys if we
Yeah.
could down there. And it'll just be cool to be, in that world, because we've just never gone to anything like that. And besides just getting out on a guy's trip, it'll be fun
Yeah.
to be, in a playground of all of our favorite things there.
Where you stand?
We are staying at, what is it? I do not remember. It's on the old strip. I forgot the name of it, but it's on the old strip allegedly.
Like
I
Fremont
forgot the name
Street?
of
Do you
it.
know? Like down
I
there?
don't I don't know the street. We
I,
made all the plans and bought all the tickets and
yeah.
stuff at lunch one day, and have hardly looked at it since.
I get it. I totally understand. Yeah, I've never been to Fremont Street, but that's like one of the things that I want to do this year. The
uh-huh.
one that I want to get to, and in my last podcast, I did like what I'm going to be doing. Fontainebleau is the new hotel there. That's where I want to spend some time. It
Yeah,
looks absolutely incredible. So that's my big thing.
ours looks a little bit classic, we'll call it.
Cool.
It looks, yeah, it looks like it doesn't have a pool or hot tub or anything, and it was competitively priced.
Yeah.
We're there for the builder show, not for the high end hotel, and I'm,
Yeah.
I'm footing the bill for it, so I wasn't exactly going super high end.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all staying at the Paris, and then I'll just be visiting different places. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Well, I think we're starting to wrap up here. Any other questions or final thoughts?
Nothing I can think of. I mean, I appreciate you inviting me on, and yeah, it's the social media world has been very interesting, and this just being on this podcast is a testament to that. So I appreciate you having me on, and I look forward to trying to get out there and be on social media more, and just it's really cool to just the friends we've made and the business connections we've made through social. So it's something I didn't really expect.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, as we start wrapping it up, I am going to backload my Lego that I started doing, where I show a different Lego set each time, and part of the reason is because then perhaps I can write off buying Legos for the family, because they
Right.
are stinking expensive, for crying out loud. But
It's
whatever.
it's hilarious you mentioned that, because Nevin, who is one of the owners of Friesen, who I bought that company from, he's
Uh-huh.
more the book smarts bookkeeping side of their company, and he just a couple of weeks ago was showing me this huge ridiculous Lego thing that he got for him and his daughters to all build, and we were just talking about that. He was kind of selling me on how Lego has done this transformation of their company, and they make stuff that even adults are into. And
Yep.
so we actually inspired us to make this video, which we're going to be releasing the next day or two, where we're doing something on Chief Architect with design, and my son and I built like a small little dinky model of an ADU, or a mother-in-law unit that's the mother-in-law to this current build we're on.
Mm,
We built that out of Legos. It's very bad, so don't expect it to actually look like it. And yeah, it's just a funny little
that's awesome.
Lego story.
Well, Lego Masters. I don't know if you've watched that, but our family
Uh,
started with this last season, and yeah, that's like one of our go-to shows now. Lego
I'll
Masters
check
is
it
pretty
out.
good. All right, so I am going to show this Lego set here. This is Pac-Man, and hopefully the camera will pick this up. Do you see those guys moving?
I can see just like the a third of it maybe for what's in screen, but I can see it moving. So
I'm
I
going to
didn't
show
realize that was
you.
a Lego because I saw that in the background. That's pretty cool.
And then this button here makes them turn around. So this was Ethan's. This was his set that he did.
No way.
And then you're over at, what was the guy's name that you're at his studio?
Justin Grimaldo with
So
Sightseer Productions.
is Grogu in the background yours, or is that Yoda, or is it
That
somebody at
that
your
is
studio?
Yoda, and I don't know anything about what's in this room, but there is a lot in this room, and most of it is Star Wars esque. A little bit of Lord of the Rings, lots of books, and very richly decorated. So this is where a lot of the thinking happens. He does like videography for weddings and lots of
Mm,
other things, and I'm trying to get to a point where I can maybe not have them full time, but have them heavily involved in our
yeah,
just our day to day stuff because they come out periodically and just they're fun guys to be around. For one, I love spending time with them and
yeah,
talking about social media and making up plans with them because not everyone's excited about it. A lot of people think it's
yeah,
silly, and I love the idea of blending the business aspect with it because that's also not usually a lot of people's focus. So
yeah.
yeah,
Cool. Well, let's wrap it up then. Joey, is it Viltrakis, like with a long A?
you got it, Viltrakis.
Joey Viltrakis. And what's your Instagram handle? And is it the same for your YouTube? Any other social media accounts?
We have a Facebook too, but that's about it. But it is Viltrakis Design Build on Instagram and Facebook, and our YouTube is just my name, Joey Viltrakis. Right now, we're still figuring out if that makes sense or to do a company specific one, but
Hmm.
that's what it is currently.
Cool. Viltrakis the Lithuanian. I'm going to start that account and then I will sell it to you for $100,000.
Deal.
All right, guys. Well, this has been an enjoyable, very first official interviewed podcast. If you listen to this, look for Joey and his horde down at the budget hotel place. No, don't go there. I have a
It's
feeling
a
it's
tall
going to
red
be
one,
on
I
the internet.
think.
What's that?
It's a tall red one, so that might help. That's all I remember out of it. Is a tall red cheap one.
Yeah. Well, there's the Hilton. I was doing my outro there, but there's
If you
Resorts
said it, I
World.
would know it. It's like a
Resorts
one
World is pretty
one name
cool.
and it's a short word. The first thing I'm going to do is check my email when I hop off of this, and I'll wish I would have just remembered it, but it's
Oh,
nothing
that's all right.
special.
We're just a couple of guys doing our thing. Anyway, give him a follow over on Instagram. Maybe you'll get to see him at the International Builder Show. And I'm Brian with Pioneer Builders. You can check me out at Pioneer Builders Inc. on Instagram. My longer form stuff is over on Build Show Network. So you can check me out there. Just really enjoying this. And it's nice to get to meet guys like Joey who are younger, younger than me, about 15 years, hungry, but has his head on straight. So thank you
Thank you.
so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, should that be the case. And we'll catch you next time on the Pioneer Builders podcast.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me on.